whenever you are. Welcome, good souls of the planet and beyond, to Paranormal Now. I'm Alan B. Smith. Join us as we traverse the cosmic highway of paranormal portals and tantalizing turnoffs. Tonight's returning guest is ufologist Cheryl Costa to speak on consciousness and the cosmic human mind. And there's a lot to her story, so we'll get to all that in just a little bit. Share your thoughts and experiences with us during or after the show on Facebook, facebook.com/paranormalnowradio, on Instagram. I've just had a lot of conversations and a number of thoughts that have been a little disturbing. And so I wanted to share some of my thoughts on this with you. So if I may take a moment, myself and probably yourself as well, we all have friends, coworkers, family with different politics, and sometimes drastically different politics and points of view. But with some, I'm perfectly successful with managing those relationships and to have really good and true relationships with people who are very different in their either religious or political points of view. And all of us, we all disagree about something. And I feel that strongly that we should always speak our minds when we have a true conviction about the things we care about. But there is no reason at all to be cruel or mean-spirited, attack people online because they have diametrically opposing view. Sometimes just a slightly different view, people blow up on each other. And I'm seeing more and more of this lately. But as our society becomes more divisive, it becomes more difficult to tackle our collective problems as humans. And this translates from social media right into our real-time politics. If we step back, sometimes it becomes clear we are used as pawns by the very politicians that we elect, pitting us against each other. Or maybe politicians will tack on some small policy change to a budget appropriation, for instance, right, to get you to cheer them on. And really, it's just to placate us, to buy themselves more time while they do more political wheeling and dealing, kick the can down the road, but keep us voting for them in place. And then both parties are completely guilty of this. There are so many ways politicians' own supporters are abused. They abuse us in many ways, use us. And the frustration is stirred, and it's easier to blame the other side, which leads us to the concept of us and them. And I have to ask, are we really an us or a them? Are all liberals exactly the same? Are all conservatives exactly the same? No, of course not. We know this. Or might we be more complex than that? So perhaps if our temper, our fears, our anger, our emotions, if we can temper them just enough, maybe we can not take sides so blindly, but just truly think for ourselves individually. And I feel like this could put us on a path towards healing, something that we're really missing. If we commit to worshiping any one person, I humbly submit that we are forfeiting free thinking. We're entrapping ourselves in blind devotion. And as we all know, faith is a tricky thing. And so is the mind. So, look, we're all humans. We're imperfect. And for the most part, we are all sort of programmed. We are who we are because billions of moments in our lives, most of which we can't even recall, moments that shape us before we can even grasp any sense of self-awareness of who we are, how we came to be who we are. How do you grapple with that? How much control do you have on being who you are? So a bunch of subconscious programs are running in the background without our control or even sometimes our consent. And then we just go on functioning. So what I love about the topics that we discuss here is that it transcends all of that. Politics, hate, and animosity. We come onto shows like this on platforms like KGRA, and we all look to the stars We're drawn to this universal cosmic awareness of something that's just far bigger than we can imagine. And as we are all about to delve into consciousness and more with Cheryl Costa in just a little bit, I submit to you that it really should be love and empathy and compassion that we strive for, because that's what's going to save us. That's the glue that's going to bring us all together, keep us together. It's not, I really don't think it's survival of the fittest, because, a lot of species on this planet go by survival of the fittest, and they end up going extinct because of outside forces. But humans were different. We're set apart in that regard. And so I think that if we all focus on the big love, then we have a really good chance at healing the wounds that divide us and just continuing to evolve as a species. So, anyway, after that diatribe, I am glad that you're with us tonight. A bunch of curious minds just huddled round and gathered here to hopefully be better people and learn about the world. So that's enough for me. Now I'm going to bring on Cheryl Costa. She is an upstate New York resident and a New York native who saw her first UFO at age 12. Cheryl spent years as a Buddhist monastic and focused finding inner peace, revelations of mindfulness, and freeing oneself from the limits of matter. She's a vegetarian of 2 military services, Air Force and the Navy. She's a retired information security professional from the aerospace industry. Since 2013, Cheryl has written the widely popular UFO column New York Skies for SyracuseNewTimes.com. In March 2017, Cheryl and co-author Linda Miller Costa released their UFO statistics book, UFO Sightings Desk Reference, United States of America 2001 to 2015. Their book presents data and analysis trends for 121,000 USA UFO sighting reports. Cheryl was named Researcher of the Year at the 2018 International UFO Congress. She holds a bachelor's degree of arts from the State University of New York at Empire State College. Cheryl, welcome back to Paranormal Now.
Alan, sorry, I had my microphone muted. Thank you very much, Alan. Been looking forward to coming back and chatting.
Yeah, thank you. So there's so much to talk about. When you say the word consciousness, right? That's a very broad term and topic. So obviously your bio and things that we talk about in the past have much more to do with ufology, and yes, that can all tie in. So why don't you start us where you think is the best place to begin to tell us about this journey towards the exploration of your mind and your own spirituality?
I suspect that your audience is a mix of individuals. Some people paranormal bend, some people maybe ghosts that bend. Anything of that whole paranormal thing with where a lot of weird stuff happens. The stuff, excuse the expression, just weird stuff. Okay. As a kid, 2 things I was aware of. One, I saw things other kids did not see. Okay. And then it was as I was coming of age, my family explained it to me that on my mother's side of the family, clairvoyance runs one down that side of the family. But on my father's side of the family, as it turned out, we descend from North African shamans. So my brother and sister and I got a double whammy of this. Not everybody's born with it. Everybody has the base ability. It's there. It's just most people have not developed it. Some family lines, I believe it's probably more genetic memory. Somebody along the line developed it, and it just got transmitted down the genetic circuit somehow. Mm-hmm. And I'm a firm believer in genetic memory. And so what happened was, in my case, I was aware of things that other people were not aware of. And so my cousins were as well, to a different degree. And because my father was Roman Catholic, my mother was Hellfire and Brimstone Pentecostal. And she signed a paper that said that the kids would be educated in Catholicism. Well, I was the first kid to come along. And they threw me in a Catholic school. And I did not get along with the nuns very well. Okay, because I had this weird awareness. And, of course, I would say things that, and it began spooking them out. Okay, especially when the kids in school would say, "Wow," God, I'd have to use my old name. I don't want to do that. So we'll say, "Oh God, I don't know what to call myself. I don't want to use my old name."
Original Cheryl.
The original Cheryl, yes, okay.
Which is still you.
The boy Cheryl. Okay, we'll call it that. Boy Cheryl. Actually, because I was always Cheryl sort of inside anyway. It's just a matter of I had to keep it hidden. So boy Cheryl would tell the little friends, what they were going to get for their birthday and things like this, because the family, we were sort of blessed with this precognition thing where we had very vivid dreams or a very strong sense of knowing. And of course, the nuns would say, "Well, no, boy Cheryl's just guessing." Okay, and of course, then it always happened. So eventually, there was the pastor began inviting me over to the rectory on Wednesday, once or twice a month, for peanut butter and jelly sandwich and a bowl of pudding for lunch. Okay. Mm-hmm. And to give everybody a picture, imagine John Houseman, the guy that was like the lawyer teacher in the Paper Chase. Okay, very, very gruff looking guy, that type of thing. And he used to be very, very intimidating when he came and taught religious classes at the Catholic school. But, when you got over there and he's sitting there in a pair of jeans and he's got just a T-shirt on, it kind of took some of the sting out of him, if you know what I mean. Otherwise, I was terrified to go face the guy. I was a first or second grader. Mm-hmm. He had a big old Wallensack tape recorder. Remember those big aluminum ones, aluminum colored reel-to-reels? Mm-hmm. And he had one of them. He had it set up on the table, and he had a microphone, and he'd turn it on, and he'd start a conversation with me. And we'd talk and have our sandwiches and our peanut butter cookies and things like this, and we'd talk. And he'd ask me about my dreams and my feelings. And he very thoroughly documented that I had very genuine gifts, mm-hmm. Okay, including one that there was one where one of our nuns, I had a dream one of the nuns fell down the stairs. And she was covered with this great red ribbon, and around her were swords and shields and dragons. Mm. It was a weird symbolic dream. Yeah. And he made notes. He kept written notes. About 3 months later, one of the nuns, a different class than I was in, was coming down some stairs. You know how they have carpeting on stairs and they have like a little brass bar that kind of holds it on the thing? Yeah. One of those came loose, and the whole thing unfeathered while she was coming down the stairs, and she went butt over tin cup down the stairs, compound fractured her leg. And that was the other thing. I said there was bone and blood. Okay. And as it turned out, she compound fractured her leg, and so there was bone, there was blood, and she was helping the 6th grade teacher whose class was studying the Crusades, and they had done an art project, so there were swords and shields and dragons.
That is.
And
go ahead. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, no, I was going to say that's astounding.
So this is the kind of stuff that I related to the guy, okay? Mm-hmm. And when he shared it with the Catholic the nuns, and in those days we had lots of nuns over there in the convent. They taught all eight grades, and that just spooked them even more. I was the spawn of Satan, and they wouldn't come near me, and that was their attitude. But the goofy thing in my case is I managed to get out of Catholic school in 6th grade instead of 8th grade like all my schoolmates. I told my parents I couldn't stand it anymore. Okay, I didn't like I was a Portuguese kid, and a Portuguese kid in the town I grew up in. That was pretty much run by Italians and Irish in my town, and the Germans who blew glass at the glassworks. We were the closest thing that we had to a black family in the town, so to speak.
Sure, the way you're ostracized and treated.
Yeah, especially in the 1950s, and early 60s. So there was this. We were the ones from the wrong side of the tracks for all intents and purposes.
Gotcha.
So other kids would get breaks on tests and things like this because Dad comes down and runs the bingo or something like this. I was a poorer family. My dad didn't have time to come down there and do that kind of stuff. So, needless to say, I didn't get any of the breaks, and you could see where the favoritism was. Okay.
Yeah.
So I got out in 6th grade and went to beg my mother to let me go to public school. So I did. So I went over, started junior high school over at a couple blocks from my house, actually. And that was a refreshing break for me to get away from that. But
were you bullied in either place at all? Like outright bullied?
Outright bullied? My mother will tell you there wasn't a night I didn't come home with a bloodied lip or a torn shirt.
Okay, well that answers that.
Okay, you got to understand, when I went in the Air Force at 18, I was 106 pounds dripping wet.
Wow.
Okay, so I was a small kid in those days,
Mm.
And so I think that the thing to keep in mind is, and I'm not boo-hooing it, it's just a fact of life. When we were in 1st grade, the nuns used to say, "Who wants to be a priest or a nun when they grow up?" Yay! And all the hands would go up. By the time you get to about 8th or 9th grade, it weeds out to a handful.
Mm-hmm.
I was one of the 3 boy persons who made it to high school to be a Catholic monk or a Catholic priest.
Uh-huh.
Okay. My problem was, by the time I hit 16, 17 years old, my paranormal gifts kicked in. The force runs strong through this one, as they say. And I lost the faith. For one, because, and I'm not insulting anybody's Catholic faith, okay? Please understand that out there in radio land. I'm not insulting them, but this was my perspective, was that what they were teaching was a complete fairy tale, and I did not see anything that they were teaching that matched with the reality I was aware of.
Mm-hmm.
And that was complicated.
I was also raised Catholic, so I can sympathize. I understand. I can relate to that.
I'll give you a good example. We had a kid in our class. His dad had burst appendix. He died in his early 30s, and left a family of like 8 kids. And one of the kids, a few weeks after this guy's dad died, asked the nun. We were in our morning religion class, and she says, "Well, where do we go when we die? I mean, where did Stevie's dad go when he died? And Stevie was back in school at that point. And the nun very nicely told him about Stevie's dad's in heaven with God. And I, of course, looked over at Stevie, and his dad was sitting on the cabinet next to him. Okay? So it was stuff like that.
When you first got hit with the sensation that something is different about you in this regard, did that coincide with your questioning of the faith, or the questioning of the faith come first?
No, I was good. I actually thought of staying with this whole idea of the priesthood right up until I was in senior in high school. I gave it a break. Okay, but boy, it was shaky. Okay. It was so funny because I actually graduated from high school, public high school, and I actually graduated from the Catholics. I forget what it's called, CDC or something like that. I can't remember what it was called. CCD program with honors.
Wow. And
the funny thing was, the 7 of us that were up there that won the honors category, every one of us had lost the faith. It was really weird. But
if I may interject,
go ahead.
It makes sense to you. I did CCD, and I also was confirmed by the Catholic Church. But I think this is a good way to sort of explain structure in institution this way, because by the time I was confirmed, I had already disavowed internally the religion. And yet, according to the Catholic Church, they think I'm confirmed. I'm a part of the church.
Oh, you have an indelible marker in your soul.
Apparently.
Yeah, there's like this thumbprint on your soul that says you were confirmed. You know, and if you go to hell, they'll laugh at you. You know,
that's odd, right? That's an odd thing because it ignores what actually is happening inside me.
Yeah,
right. And so when I went through CCD, and I'm sure you did the same thing, did you ask a lot of questions? Frustrate and not get the answers you were looking for?
Oh, I always was the one that got to be on the con side of a debate in our CCD classes. Birth control. This is 1967, 68 time frame. People were just, the pill was the rage at the time, and they'd get up on Sunday and rant at the women about the evils of the pill, and whole families were getting up and walking out during the middle of the sermon. This was the first real serious breakdown in the community of people saying, I don't have to listen to this. Mm-hmm. I don't believe what you're saying is correct. You shouldn't be controlling this part of my life. Okay?
Yeah. And so for those listening, I just want to be clear, this is not about bashing the church right now or anything like that. We're just sharing Cheryl's story. So, and
it's part of a history with where the Catholic Church has started losing some of its influence. Right. The rot became there. The rot really started right in the mid '60s. It started with the Beatles, and it got stronger and stronger with the pill.
Okay, there you go.
And so if I got asked to be on a competing side of a debate in our religious class at CCD, the priest was always amazed how well I could stand up for the other side of the argument. Of course, he'd always stand up and say, but boy Cheryl doesn't really truly believe those things, does he? You know? Mm-hmm. Okay, well, again, because of my weirdness, the old father that I told you about, Father, we'll call him Father G. Father G, I told him these things, mm-hmm. and he did these interviews with me right up through 6th grade. Okay, when I left. And anybody who's reading into this saying, "Oh, did Father G abuse you?" No, he never laid a finger on me ever. Okay,
but he was receptive and non-judgmental.
Yeah, he was receptive and non-judgmental and wanted to understand these gifts. Okay. So here's where it went. I had a long talk with him there when I was a junior, and I said, look, these gifts have to be a gift from God, even though I've got 3 priests here. In those days, there was like 4 priests in your parish, right? You know, yeah. And 3 of them told me, oh, these gifts are a mark of the devil. You shouldn't use them. Oh, put them in a closet and forget about them. You know, and that was the tone. And I told Father G, I said, look, you've been following this for, half my school life. I said, my grandmother was a clergy in the spiritualist church. Okay, I've been close to this all my life. People talk about this stuff at Sunday dinner. It's casual. Everybody else treats it like witchcraft, but it's talked about as casually as somebody got a new car or somebody's got a new baby at our Sunday dinners, at my grandmother's house, at my aunt's house, at my own house. But I said, I viewed it as just God's given me a different sight, and he agreed. And I said, where would that sight be best put to use? Mm-hmm. And he said, helping your fellow man. Did you consider becoming a priest? I said, I've talked about it since I was in 1st grade. And the plan was, when I graduated from senior high school, I was supposed to go spend my summer vacation, kind of a boot camp up at one of the. There was a monastery up on up in the Finger Lakes. I was going to go stay there with them for the summer, and kind of go into a retreat kind of thing. And then I was supposed to start seminary in the fall. That was the plan. In fact, there were 3 of us of the boy persons who were going to do that from our parish, and there were like 5 girls that were going into convents, and. Only one of them is still a nun. In fact, I had dinner with her. I had breakfast with her Christmas time, this past Christmas. We talk on Facebook all the time. And the other boys, they did go to seminary. Both of them graduated from seminary. One was killed in a plane crash about a year later, going to a mission down in South America. But the other one's retired now from being a priest. Mm-hmm. In my case, Friday afternoon, that Apollo 13 was coming back. Okay, I was helping one of the young priests wash the cars down at the rectory. And I got invited into dinner, and this wasn't a formal dinner in the big dining room with all the big wood tables and all that kind of stuff. This was like the casual run, sitting around in your shorts and t-shirts in the kitchen.
Yeah.
And the priests were there, and there was some like little story of little bony babies in Biafra or Nigeria or someplace like that. It was just like heads with skeleton bodies, And I started crying. I was a very soft heart kid. And I started crying. And the pastor, with liquor on his breath, said, "If you're going to be a priest, you're going to have to be stronger than that." Mm. And I tried to back down, and he wouldn't let me back down. He pushed the argument. We got into an all-out screaming match, and they pulled my I left the rectory, and they pulled my sponsorship the next morning.
Wow.
I was in the Air Force about 8 weeks later.
Holy cow. So
volunteered for Vietnam a year after that. See, I figured my life was over with, so I wasn't dealing well with the fact that I had this female monkey on my back, as they say. Mm-hmm. And so actually, you know what put me over the top? There was a book available in 1969, 1970 called Everything You Want to Know About Sex But Were Afraid to Ask. Very famous book.
Yeah, yeah.
Dr. Oh, God, I can't remember his name. I can't remember the guy's name. But when I read the chapter of what he thought transsexuals were, that's before transgender, okay? Yep. The word transgender was coined in the mid-1980s. I was one of the 11 people who coined it.
Ah.
Okay, I was an activist in those days.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so what happened was... I read that book one Friday night in March of 1971, and he said that transsexual people were mutilated homosexual transvestites.
Wait.
And, yeah.
Mutilated homosexual transvestites.
Yep, that was his opinion. I didn't feel myself to be that, so I volunteered for Vietnam on Monday morning. I was going to do the honorable thing, go over and get myself killed.
And at least go out doing something supposedly honorable. Is that really what you thought?
That's exactly what I thought.
Wow.
I came from a very good Republican family. I found myself painted into a corner. Now, this is somebody who was deeply in a closet about themselves.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you, because, hearing the story up to this point, was it something that was gradually weighing on you heavier and heavier, or was this just a moment that kind of like snapped open this like floodgate for you when you had this argument?
Yeah, everything that it got into accusations about, how do I want to say this? It started out simply enough. Oh, I don't think you're strong enough. I shouldn't have signed your papers to send you there. I don't think you've got what it takes. And then he said, oh yeah. And I heard from Father over here, and he said that, you're always taking the con side of things. Your attitude is wrong. Your view is wrong. And that was pretty much the tone. And he got me to a point where I blew.
Yeah.
And I told him, I says, on one hand, you tell people they can't have birth control. On the other hand, you don't take care of those excess kids, do you? And then, oh, by the way, there's a couple of you around here that put your hands where they shouldn't be. I hear stories from people, and oh boy, I just dug myself a hole with all of them.
So you were conscious of these issues at the time, but then we all have our own internal struggle.
Oh yeah,
so your own, I guess, was just compounded by all of this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And of course, I wasn't going to share the Cheryl side of this thing. Obviously, that was very private set of feelings.
And they didn't know about that, right? They had
of course they did not. They did not know this. My family did not know this. Mm-hmm. Okay. My grandmother did. She figured it out one day. And when my mother said, well, I don't want you letting boy Cheryl sew when he's up here on weekends or spending 2 or 3 weeks in the summertime on the farm with grandma and grandpa, don't let him sew. That's girl sissy stuff, right? Yeah. And my grandmother came to me and says, I'm not supposed to let you do that. And I says, look, this was the first second grader saying, it's not going to turn me into anything I'm not already. And she says, I kind of figured that one out myself. She was a very wise lady. And, after I changed in the early 90s, this is about a year before she died. She hadn't seen me in a couple of years, and I went up to see her, and I was kind of dressed down a bit. My mother said, no, dress up nice for your grandmother. So I dressed up nice for my grandmother, and I went up there, and she took one look at me and said, honey, you are absolutely lovely. Is the family giving you any crap? And I said, yeah, I've had a bunch of crap from a lot of members, and particularly certain cousins in the family. And this is 92-year-old grandma, and she looked at me and says, Cheryl, F them.
I had years ago an acting teacher who said that was their methodology for everything. And I did that work? Did that help you?
What's that? Did what help me?
That philosophy of just F them. Did you take that to heart?
Yes, I did. I just, I tried not to let them get to me. The problem is my immediate family doesn't deal with it worth a damn. In fact, I've gone through periods over the last 40 years of being tolerated or shunned. I'm currently in a state of shunning. Actually, I was formally disowned about 6 months ago. So, so if that shows you where I sit with them right now, I'm a card carrying, broom toting, goddess worshiping witch. I'm a Isis priestess of Isis, the goddess Isis.
So you pretty much go against everything.
Absolutely,
All right, so we kind of did get ahead of ourselves as far as the line goes, but so this was in
that is what we call in the writing trade a foreshadowing.
That was great. 91 or 92, this occurred, right, with your grandmother?
Yeah, I had my change in 80s in 89. The change, people think you go someplace and have an operation. I kept having everybody tell me in the middle 80s that if I did something like this, I was going to end up in the gutter. I was destroying myself and all this. So I was working with a therapist that was associated with John Hopkins. It wasn't formally at him, but he was under their umbrella for high level therapists supervising lower level therapists, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And he was also under their umbrella for psychoendocrinology. So if somebody needed to go on some kind of medication, he'd make a recommendation to a psychoendocrinologist who would write the scripts based on this guy's judgment. Okay. And of course it was board reviewed and all that kind of stuff. So, okay, but we're ahead of it by almost 20 years.
Exactly. So you left for Vietnam. You didn't think that you would return, or you didn't know. You were just kind of utterly dismayed at this point.
Remember, I'm clairvoyant. I stepped off the plane. The only way I can explain this to non-psychic people, you walk into a very packed theater or a very packed movie theater, and everybody's chatting before the movie. Mm-hmm. You know that kind of chatter murmur?
Yep.
Okay, I get that when I go into newer grade cemeteries, and I got that when I walked off the airplane. As soon as I touched the ground and got on the tarmac, there was a level of murmur that was deafening for me, and it drove me to drink. For the year I was there, I crawled into a bottle.
While you were there?
Yeah.
And was that something you were able to keep to yourself?
That I drank?
Yeah, I mean, were you able to sort of keep all of it, just bottled up inside using the drink?
Well, no, it didn't work well. It numbed it enough that I could go to sleep. Usually the only time I got to drink was at, after duty hours. Plus the kind of work I did, I was a telephone lineman, and in war zones, if you're climbing telephone poles, people shoot at you on those things.
Honestly, that is a truly courageous job and extraordinarily dangerous.
Yeah, I went over there pretty much with the idea I'm probably going to get killed. At least I'll leave my family with an honorable mention, so to speak. All I managed to do is come back a decorated war hero.
But
strange.
That's not what you expected.
No, not at all. Now, the other thing that happened while I was over there, a couple of things were noticed. One, there were some Native American guys who befriended me. They realized I was a Two Souls. Okay, and they figured me out real quick. And it wasn't figuring out so much the Two Souls part as much as the fact that I'd get up in the middle of the night and walk out of the barracks carrying my flak jacket and my helmet and a 6-pack of Coke and go down into the bunker. And 10 minutes later, 15 minutes later, the base would get shelled. Okay. Okay. And people after that, after a couple of things like that happened, I picked up a nickname for a time of Canary. Okay, because I was the barracks canary. If I got up and left, they all got up and left too. Yep. There was that, and then I had another nickname over there, but we're not going to discuss it. No, it's funny actually. Because I was a lineman, I used to wear my hard hat liner. And because I did a lot of soldering and welding work up on the poles, I'd had these big, like welding goggles kind of thing, right? So if I had my goggles up on top of my hard hat liner, and I was a little skinny kid. Remember, I went to Vietnam about 106 pounds. Okay, so my very prominent front teeth, I picked up the nickname of Rocky J. Squirrel. And I thought I had left it. I thought I had left it in Texas where I trained for lineman work, and I thought, oh, that's behind me, And I was up on a pole one day working on something, and some guy from Texas transferred into the local mobile construction unit, and all of a sudden all of a sudden I'm up on the pole working. All of a sudden I hear this truck pull up, and somebody holler up, "Hey, Rocky!" So it followed me over there. Air Force is a very small community in that context. I
was going to say that's pretty impressive. Yeah, the best nickname I ever got was Monkey Boy when I used to climb trees as a kid.
Yeah. There you go. Well, okay. So, I don't know where. At this point, I got out of Vietnam. I was the only. This is a strange thing because I was plugged in. I was child of a very good Republican family. Mm-hmm. Base of 15,000 men and women. Cameron Bay Air Base. I was the only person on that base, and General didn't even get it. I was the only person on that base that got a Christmas card from President Nixon and President and Mrs. Nixon.
Wow.
Okay. Wow. And it was sort of funny because I took it out of my mailbox in Pennsylvania Avenue, and I opened it up, and my God, there's this big. If you Google on Google, for those of you listening, if you Google the 1971 Christmas card from President Nixon, you'll get this nice emerald green card with a gold embossed seal of the White House dead center in it. That's what the card looks like.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I looked at it, and this is President and Mrs. Nixon. Wow, I'm touched. And my captain was standing a few feet. He says, "Wow, that's a classic looking Christmas card." And I said, "Yes. Did you get one?" He said, "Well, who's it from?" I said, "President Nixon and Mrs. Nixon." "What? You didn't get one?" This is my captain. He says, "No, can I see it?" He's looking in. "Oh my God, this is genuine. Can I borrow this?" And I said, "I want it back." And he took it over to the officers club. Nobody else on base got one of those.
Yeah. Well, so you garner attention, obviously for good deeds done, and here you are, sort of being recognized and awarded, and up until this point, you were sort of questioning your value, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good way of putting it. That is a good way of putting it. Yeah, I did. I was questioning my value. I volunteered the one time I thought I was really going to die over there was, well, two times. There was one particularly bad situation where we had somebody shooting at us on a pole when I was on a pole and I couldn't get down fast enough, and that I didn't think I was going to make it off the pole alive. As it was, I ended up falling, but I didn't fall that far, but I did hurt myself. So, and then the other time was in late, and again, you can Google this, Cameron Bay ammunition dump, August 1971. Biggest ammo dump. It was a tri-service ammo dump, biggest one on the planet at that time, and a sapper charge went off in the thing, and the whole place went up over a period of 12 hours. Best 4th of July fireworks you ever saw in your life. Wrecks of 500-pound bombs going off, 3,000 bombs going off. People 40 miles away at another Air Force base thought the place had been nuked. It looked that bad.
I have to tell you, for those who are listening and wondering, hey, when are we going to get to the consciousness stuff? This is your life experience, and you have had phenomenal experiences, and you have a journey that is similar to a lot of other people, but also different from a lot of other people. And everything that you experienced leading up to your own personal spiritual journey, if you will, is what gives you value on that journey, because that's how you get to know yourself, right?
Yeah, exactly. This ammo dump going up, we were down behind the revetments. These are like a little 6-inch thick, 8-inch thick, steel reinforced concrete fence, all the way around your barracks. And every time we'd see the shockwave go up, we all threw ourselves on the ground. Of course, I was this little guy, and all these 250-pound sergeants are falling on top of me, and I literally, my face down in the sand, thought to myself, I am not going to get out of here alive. I really, truly, that night, it was 12, 13 hours of this deafening stuff. All of our ears were ringing for 2-3 weeks afterwards. It was horrendous. What was goofy, though, was a couple of nights later, I had a prophetic dream. I had a dream. I was in a church, and a bride was being brought up to me on the altar. Okay, I didn't recognize the man. The woman had a veil over her face. I looked out into the church, and everybody was sitting on one side of the church, and the best man was sitting by himself on the other side and was empty. Now, that has a prophetic sound to it. It's weird. Dreams make sense while you're there, but they don't make sense now. And I thought that's all that was.
Yeah.
Okay. 2.5 years later, that's exactly how it played out.
Wow. See, now I only
why did they all sit on the other side of the church? Everybody from both sides of the family knew each other, and they all decided to sit together on one side of the church.
Why was it formulated like that in your dream?
It just came up like that. But what the dream was showing me that there was a life after where I was. That was the first real sense that I had a prophetic dream that showed me that there was something bigger going to happen to me.
So you didn't step into at nighttime, you don't seek out lucid dreaming. These sort of dreams come to you naturally.
Back in those days, I didn't seek out lucid dreaming. Now it's as easy as throwing out a light switch. But back in those days, I did not know how, and I didn't try to do that.
So it was certainly a surprise to you.
Yes,
okay.
And like I said, I didn't know that it was a prophetic dream that it happened.
At the time,
okay. But many times there were in the years after that, I had the argument. My closest psychic friends and I had a projection window of about 12 to 18 months. Typically, about 18 months was the maximum range on this thing. Okay, this was one of those unusual things where it was about 2.5 years out. But I think that was just a bigger spiritual force showing me, giving me the confidence to know that I was going to get out of there in one piece. And that was pretty much it.
Well, is that a force coming to you, or is that you tapping into something?
I think then I thought it was a force coming to me. Now I would say I was just tapping into the bigger consciousness. Okay, so I guess the biggest thing to go there is I went through 9 months of Vietnam. They started a thing called Project Hammer Draw to get everybody out of there. Nixon was trying to throttle down the war. So I volunteered for a second overseas assignment because I was actually enjoying the Far East. And so I got an assignment to Japan, and I was immediately sent to a mobile telephone crew up in Korea. And the idea behind that was, this is 1972. What happened was in 1969, we had the Pueblo, which was a listening ship, got captured by the North Koreans, and everybody got thrown in a POW camp. Okay, well, what the Defense Department realized shortly after the Pueblo situation happened is they hadn't upgraded the military telephone system in South Korea since 1954.
Yeah.
Okay, so their communications technology was crap.
Rough, right.
So I was part of a telephone crew that was a big one. I mean, we're talking like 75 to 100 people working on this thing. I was part of a crew that was rebuilding a military telephone and video network throughout the country. And so that was fun. I enjoyed that. I was there about 6 months, and then my hometown got wiped out in a flood. Agnes Hurricane, June 1972, June 23rd. Mm-hmm. And so after I heard about it, let's say boy Cheryl woke up in a brothel one morning, turned on Armed Forces radio, on the little transistor radio, and caught a tail end of a Armed Forces radio newscasting, and Governor Rockefeller has sent troops into Corning and Elmira, New York to prevent looting. Huh? I'm going, what? That's where I'm from, Right.
Because you're thinking where you are is where the craziness is happening, not there.
Yeah. So I managed to get sent back to Japan, and got a hold of the Red Cross, and they couldn't make contact with anybody back east yet. So I asked for emergency leave, and I took emergency leave. And what was goofy was, at the time I was being considered, after I came out of Vietnam, I was being nominated by my command for a slot at the Air Force Academy. Okay.
That's amazing. So just to clarify, cable linemen, they distribute energy sources, right? They're sort of like the electrical bloodline for power supply. So no. Cable linemen. We had buried telephone cable and aerial telephone cable. Mm-hmm. And of course, when somebody shelled the base, fragments would go up and pierce the cables. And you got a piece of cable about as big around as a can of Coke, and inside that thing is probably 600 pair, or equivalent to 600 telephone lines, and you have to go in there and fix them and splice them back together and things like this. Or the tropical ants would sometimes eat through the plastic insulation and go in there and eat all the plastic insulation off the wires and short everything out. That was another thing I was very good at, was fixing it after the army ants ate up the telephone cables. So, gotcha. Okay, so you have this skill set, and this helps you, I suppose, to be nominated?
Well, I was a smart kid, okay? Even though I graduated in the lower quarter of my high school class, the Air Force had put me through a whole bunch of tests and everything, and they said I qualified to be in Mensa. Okay. And they said, and they also figured out I was dyslexic, and that's why I was so crappy in school. Reading was hard, not because I wasn't good. It was just even today things wrap around. So I mean, I have to use I would never have been able to enjoy Harry Potter if it hadn't been for audiobooks with Jim Dale, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So audiobooks are good. If I have to read text, I have to do it in small pieces. If people send me things electronically, I turn on the voice thing on Dragon Naturally Speaking and let the computer read it to me. Mm-hmm. That's how I work around it. It's always about a workaround. Okay, so the flood happened. I went home. I had worked in a radio station in high school, and I had no more got home. And my mother said there was not much I could do. My family's house was wiped out. We were staying at an uncle's up on the hill. They'd had 30 feet of water through their house. And she said, but the radio station desperately needs help here. Take the kid's bicycle and ride over to the radio station and help them. And I did. I went down, and their automation was gone. So I went down and camped out at the transmitter for a week, and the volunteer fire department came up every day and brought me meals twice a day, and because I still had my license and I could be the engineer and that kind of thing. So that's the kind of stuff I did. I was an electronic technician for all intents and purposes. I took vocational electronics in high school, and so I did that. I got married after I was out of the Air Force. I was married 17 years. I spent a certain portion of that in the active duty Navy, went back into a very high-tech thing there too. And then I trained and qualified in nuclear submarines. So I was a senior electronic warfare technician on a nuclear submarine.
So now, at this point, how much are computers involved? And is this complex stuff?
Oh yeah, it's complex stuff.
Yeah,
very complex stuff. I can't go into detail on any of it.
I was going to say, right. And it's funny, and some of our conversations and some of the things I've read online, I did notice that, because I was thinking, what did she do on this Navy submarine? Exactly.
Well, okay, there's a variety. In fact, I just joined my Facebook page for my old crew. It was kind of complicated because they thought Cheryl Costa was Cheryl Boyperson's wife. And so I had to give them a couple of explanations. And a lot of people did not, I don't look like him. And so finally I had to dig an old picture of him out. And I posted it on that private group, and I said, "Oh my God, that's who that is! Oh my God, and that was it, And of course, I used to joke with people. People say, "God, you turned into a girl." I said, "Yeah, so submarines will do that to you." People didn't like that joke, but it was fun. Trained in go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Okay, my work was pretty much, if you were on a fast attack submarine, my job was about listening to other people's electronic signals and recording them for intelligence purposes.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Okay, a lot of that. When we weren't at periscope depth where we would do that sort of thing, then my duties were, I was a navigation watch, and I worked on navigational plot. And when we were in port, after I qualified on submarines, passed my boards and everything, board exams. Qualifying on a submarine is a unique thing. It takes about a year, and you learn how the ship works. And then when you qualify in submarines, you've got a basic knowledge. And then when you start standing what they call a below decks watch, oh gee, then you really learn how the ship works, because you're the one running around there turning knobs and things. So.
Well, let's hold it right there, Cheryl, because we're coming right up to the break. But we will continue Cheryl's fascinating life story on the other side of this, and we will also explore consciousness, and
yes, we will,
everything that she has learned and discovered. And I think you'll find it really intriguing, as I do. It was funny because before tonight, I kept thinking to myself, I really need to start meditating it, because the show's coming up and I want to be able to say to Cheryl, hey, I've been meditating. But I've been really slacking off the past few months. But I'd like to get your take on that and how effective it is, Cheryl, on the other side of the break. This is Alan B. Smith for Paranormal Now on KGRI Radio. Stand by. We'll be right back.
You know, food was different 60 years ago. It was minimally processed, free of pesticides. It was nourishing and healthful for your body. Today, GMOs, pesticides, herbicides, and heavy processing have depleted the nutrition of our food supply, which takes a toll on our health and energy. It's harder than ever to get the right nutrition. That's what Life Change Tea is meant to counteract. Our specially blended, powerful herbal formulas can give you more energy without caffeine. It's a mild cleanse, a mild daily detox. A good detox can help revive and bring back the energy of your youth. GetTheTea.com is the website. It'll cleanse you from the inside out with this herbal proprietary formula. Go to GetTheTea.com. There's no fillers, no GMOs. It's organic. Not available in stores. You must go to their website, GetTheTea.com. And their supplements are a great way to maintain your health. Read the testimonials on the website. Go to GetTheTea.com. That's GetTheTea.com.
Hey, is that a new music app?
Yeah, check it out. Surfer Music Discovery. It links to thousands of online stations, but the twist is you see the song names and artists that are now playing live.
That's different. No guessing. Looks like a waterfall of music.
So many formats. Rock, oldies, country, R&B, jazz, and a whole lot more.
How's that spelled?
Surfer. S-U-R-F-R.
Is it expensive?
It's free. No need to sign up or sign in.
Get the Surfer Music app free from Google Play or the App Store.
This is KGRA Digital Broadcasting Station, Salt Lake City, Utah, Van Buren, Arkansas.
This is Richard Dolan announcing a new exclusive content website, richarddolanmembers.com. I've been working on this for a long time. Unique weekly podcasts that you won't hear anywhere else, fresh articles and blog posts, a special video series entitled Off the Cuff with Richard Dolan, regular Ask Me Anything style live chat sessions, and more. This is a full-featured member site where you will get my insights, my updates, and be able to interact directly with me. To learn more, go to richarddolanmembers.com.
For the thousands of wounded warriors returning from battle, Wounded Warrior Project has developed the Warriors to Work program, a career counseling service that helps wounded warriors translate their military experience to a civilian job. These extraordinary men and women bring more than just teamwork and inspiration to the workplace. They bring proven world-class job skills. And to ensure proper placement, Wounded Warrior Project works with employers to find just the right job fit. Talented, skilled, and eager to get back to work, you have the opportunity to hire a seasoned veteran. Contact Wounded Warrior Project at findwwp.org. Welcome home the brave.
Hey, KGRA family, are you looking to show the world that you're a true believer? Well, shop now at thesaucerbrand.com. They've got something for the whole family. Jackets, hoodies, shirts, and hats, and so much more. And now's your last chance to use promo code KGRA for $10 off when you spend $50 or more at thesaucerbrand.com. Your new source for official and authentic ufology-inspired essentials made right here in the USA. And don't forget, use promo code KGRA at checkout and get $10 off when you spend $50 or more. Believe in style and elevate your craft at thesaucerbrand.com. And look for them at The Alien Con, June 21st through the 23rd.
Now you have the inside contact for alternative talk radio. The Planet. KGRAradio.com.
Welcome back to Paranormal Now. This is Alan B. Smith, your host tonight. And for those of you who got a little bit of chuckle in the chat room tonight, hey, what can I tell you? There's no better show than sprinkling a little Race Hobbs throughout. So that was some good fun. It's always good to hear Race's voice anyway. But we're back with Cheryl Costa, and we will be talking metaphysics, consciousness, and in Cheryl's word, mysticism. And I think that's a great way to describe some of the things that she explores. We haven't even talked about her podcast, Exploring the Life of a Wiccan, yet. So, Cheryl, welcome back to the show. Let's pick it up and take us there.
Okay, let's take the religion track now. Okay, all right. When I got in the Air Force, when I was in Texas, I was down there. You go to Lackland Air Force Base, you go through boot camp, and then they send you someplace else, right? No, I got a direct duty assignment for Lackland Air Force Base. So I literally, they put me on a bus and sent me over to the other side of the permanent side of the base. And I trained there on a direct duty assignment. And one of the things I did was I went to church with everybody. Okay. And I had guys that were, everything from Hellfire and Brimstone Pentecostals to Dancing with Snakes to every form of Baptist or Presbyterian you could possibly, Latter-day Saints, you name it, I saw it. So I went to church with everybody at one point, all my barracks friends, and I wanted to see what everybody else was being oriented to and this type of thing. Again, remember, I was a kid that grew up thinking they were going to be a priest. Yeah. Okay. And I did all this, and the bottom line was, I didn't see anything there that sang to me. Mm-hmm. Okay. Fast forward, we're in Vietnam. One day we're out working on a remote telephone relay station. We have Army guys with us as the security, so to speak, because us Air Force techs in those days weren't very good warriors. Okay, we were really good technicians, but we were crappy warriors, right? And we started getting shot up, and this kid takes a wound in the chest, breathing chest wound, as they say. And my sergeant and I started stuffing battle dressings. Battle dressings are like a big hospital-grade Kotex, and we're stuffing them into this guy's chest. And this kid looks up at me with his big baby blue eyes and said, "Father, baptize me." Wow. And I looked at him, and I said, hey, come on, we're working on you here. Father baptized me. I said, look, I'm not a priest. I'm a telephone man, and he insisted to be baptized. So I took some water. Hey, I was a good Catholic kid. I took water out of my canteen and I, baptized him. We got him into a medevac. The firefight was over in 10 minutes, and we got him on a medevac. And I rode back to the base with him, and holding the proverbial bottle of plasma, as they say. And I figured it looked like he was going south. So I was good. Like I said, I was a good Catholic kid. I knew the drill. I broke out some M16 gun oil and gave him extreme unction, last rites, Yeah. And the base chaplain heard about this, had me over for breakfast. Oh my God! The hero of the day. That was fantastic. Did you ever think about becoming a priest? And I told him the short story about that deal. And of course, letters went home to the home parish, and of course, all was forgiven. And I promptly flipped the bird to everybody on that. Okay, I wasn't having any of it.
Sure.
Okay. I was insulted that they wanted me back. That it took something like that to prove my worth to them.
Of course.
And I just wasn't interested. So I stayed away from it, and I just considered myself spiritual and let it go at that. Okay, fast forward to get into the Navy in 74 time frame. By 76, I'm through submarine school. I'm through all the advanced navigation schools. So it's like 2 years worth of school. Mm-hmm. And I'm on my submarine, and there's a Wiccan guy. And I managed to start getting in some good conversations with him. He was a steward. They cooked, and he waited on the officers and did their laundry and things. And I used to get my shift arranged so that I was off when he was doing their laundry. So we could sit down in the ship's laundry where it was noisy. Nobody could hear our conversation, because being Wicca in those days was a no-no. Okay. And So I became Wiccan. Okay. And there were about 8 of us on board the ship. And one by one, they revealed themselves to me. It was a very private thing. Okay. And that was pretty much, and I practiced as what they would call a solitary practitioner. Most people that practice craft practice as a solitary practitioner. It's things like covens are more the exception than the rule.
I see.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And let me explain that very briefly. If a bunch of solitaries want to get together and do a ceremony together or something like this in a celebration, potluck supper to go with it or whatever, we call that a kind of a gaggle. Okay. If they're more organized and one person starts showing some leadership, that might be called a circle. Then if at what we would call the coven level, it's more like a Harvard drill team or something like this. You have to be invited in and they have to evaluate you. And if you are in sync with their way of thinking, you're invited to stay. I over 40 years, I've been invited into no less than 6 covens, I think 7 at one point, I think. And none of them kept me. I was considered too much of a wild duck for their taste, and that's just fine. For the type of craft that I practice, it's better to be a wild duck.
Yeah.
So the bottom line, okay, I get up through. I worked with some covens up through the 80s while I was married. I got married in the early 70s, and my spouse also practiced. And then I was working for Lockheed. I was working for a military products division of IBM, and that division got bought by Loral, and then later got bought at the end of the Cold War by Lockheed.
I see.
Martin. Okay, but for retirement purposes, I'm a 32-year retiree from Lockheed Martin. Okay, even though 14 of it was in IBM military products or federal systems, as they called it. Okay, when I was going through my gender change, there was this big push from my family that you're going to be in the gutter. Okay, you're doing this for the wrong reasons. Okay, you're going to have this change, and you're going to find out you can't satisfy yourself. Or that was one argument that's thrown to me.
Well, what are the wrong reasons, though?
Oh, the wrong reasons. Oh, why would you want to give up male privilege? That was a big one. Mm-hmm. For a lot of people. The other ones just thought it's just plain crazy. My parents, even to this day, think my mother would tell you right now, if you ask her, she would tell you that she would introduce me as her daughter from Syracuse. But if you really got her into a good, deep conversation, she would tell you she thought I went off my rocker 30 years ago and, that kind of thing. And then, oh, by the way, Satan was worshiping in my weir at the same time, Well, because I'm a witch. I mean, come on,
Well, yeah, and I understand. I definitely understand all of that culturally, but is there any chance that there was like an empathetic aspect to that? Like, how a parent who finds out that their child is gay, they come out to their parent, and the parent can kind of accept it, but they're afraid of how the child's going to be treated.
No.
None of that.
Yeah, there was some of that. Yeah, I would agree with you on some of that.
Okay.
But let's take one quick spin on that. I tried to tell them numerous times. Mm-hmm. Okay, over the years, even at 16 years old, I tried to tell my mother what was going on. I couldn't get the conversation going in the direction I was trying to make it go. Okay, it was like they were dodging it. In the 80s, I had my spouse of that era allowed me to have a private life with certain friends away from where we lived, 60 miles away. There was a club we used to go. Us girls went someplace. Okay, boy Cheryl got to be girl Cheryl on a couple weekends a month. Okay, and so what ended up happening was we tried to explain it to them then. And we couldn't get it. They wouldn't sit down and talk to us about it. So a couple of years later, it was kind of hard to explain when I was over there in I had a pretty tight T-shirt. It was kind of hard to explain the fact that I was growing breasts. Mm-hmm. That was difficult. But the bottom line is this. I got on to I started an experimental therapy. We had this argument that there was an argument that supposedly if I was truly a transvestite, if you took away my libido by, say, giving either physically castrating me or chemically castrating me with Depo-Provera shots like they give the sex offenders, I would lose all desire to be Cheryl. Okay, that was one of the arguments put forth by my spouse of that era.
But they didn't understand is Cheryl is you.
Yeah, see, they thought it was just dress up, okay? And what transvestophilia has a certain fantasy aspect that goes away, that's driven by libido. Mm-hmm. So I volunteered to take a thing. In fact, now it's a relatively standard practice now, but I was one of the first 5 of about 15 that decided to try this route. And they didn't know what was going to happen. I signed a ton of releases. I mean, the running joke was one of them was, we don't know if you'll grow pine trees out of your toenails in 15 years, So we took all this stuff. And in the first few weeks, one day my therapist said, well, how do you feel? And I looked at him, and I put my hand on my chest, and I looked up skyward, and I raised my hand up past my face and said, I feel like I have a connection to everything. And he said, what? I said, I feel like I'm connected to God. And he started giving me 2 extra sessions a week for free. And we recorded them. And what it was suddenly by quelching every bit of sex drive, libido, all that sexual imagery that male persons have constantly. Yeah. By completely turning that off, about my only instincts were to breathe and eat. And suddenly my mind got quiet, my soul got quiet, and I could hear the whisper of the universe.
That is not what I expected you to say.
What did you expect me to say?
I have no idea, but not that. That's astounding. So, I mean, that was certainly not the intention of this therapy. Or chemical therapy.
No, it wasn't. In fact, what the perplexing part of it was, of course, before I took those shots, they were nasty shots. It was like, think of a shot about a shot glass full was the size of the bottle, and they had to use something on the order of a 16 gauge needle. The steroid guys, the people in the weightlifting steroid guys, use 16 grade needles because that steroid stuff is very, very heavy. This stuff had the consistency of mayonnaise. Okay, it was a very painful shot. The joke the doctor used, the one doctor I knew, that one of the doctors who had given me shots, usually later it was not just nurses, but he says, 16 gauge needles. He holds it up to the light, and I said, what are you doing? He says, looking for mice, because it was a pretty big needle, Well,
that's one way to lighten the mood, I suppose.
Yeah. And so the bottom line was, they had another unit studying me, watching my blood. And actually, there's like 3 or 4 of us they were studying, and they started backing off my dosage. And when they started backing off my dosage, suddenly a certain level of aggression came back. Mm-hmm. My spouse reported back to him, whatever you're giving them now is making them sick. And all they did was back off the dosage and let normal testosterone take over. And the Hopkins people determined after several tests that I was neurochemically allergic to testosterone.
Holy cow!
So that kind of put the.
So this was all new to everybody back then, right?
Yes. Yeah, yes. So it was funny because I was working at Lockheed, and I was in mid transition, and they tried to take my clearance away from me, not Lockheed, but the government. And he said, well, we think at the time I was still going to work as Boy Cheryl. Okay, but I was getting real soft, and my hair was changing, my eyebrows were changing, my skin was looking terrific. It was a lot of changes were becoming very apparent. Mm-hmm. And they said, well, we think you can be blackmailed. And I said, what if I could fix that? Oh, we don't think you can fix that. And I said, look, give me a couple of weeks. They said, well, I'll be back in 3 weeks, and I'll turn off your clearance at that time because I don't think you can fix this. So I came back 3 weeks later. I threw a VHS tape on the desk and said, I'm the blonde on Phil Donahue. I'm the redhead in Gary Collins' Hour magazine. And the government inspector about fell off his chair. And he said, watch, you came out on national television. I said, can't be blackmailed. Oh, by the way, I made copies of this and passed it around to all the guys in the shop, and they've taken them home to show their wives.
That is brilliant and also extraordinarily courageous.
Yeah, it fixed it. It fixed it. Well, it also opened up another thing. It meant that as long as I stayed super out, I was protected. So I became a very out and open and in-your-face activist in the mid-'80s.
Isn't that sort of ironic, though?
I did all these national television talk shows and stuff. At that time, that spouse was willing to go on and say, "This is my best girl. This is my husband and my best girlfriend in the same package."
Is this around the same time as that headshot that's still floating around out there exists?
No. No, that headshot came well after I changed and after I was long divorced from that lady.
Okay.
That headshot was in the mid '90s when I was I was part of a talk radio comedy team called the Working Girls, and we were an award-winning comedy radio program. That's all I can say. It was Rowdy Women's Locker Room Talk on Saturday night, and we had a lot of fun. Won a lot of awards, and we were the only cast in town that wasn't paid. So it was very interesting.
That is interesting. But let's get back to the the
spiritual
revelation of it. Yeah.
Okay. So this thing I had to explore it both in the context of my spiritual training as a Wicca. Okay. And we went along with this thing, and the more I went along with this thing, the more I am flooded with this. And so I got through my gender change. Okay. I did 5 years worth of therapy. Requirement is only a year's worth of therapy. Most people kind of just limply go through that, and just to meet the requirement. Everybody told me this was going to destroy my life. I figured if I'm going to destroy my life, I want to make sure I'm doing it for the right reasons. So I paid for 5 years worth of therapy. Mm-hmm. And when I got done with the whole thing, I'd been run through the full set of psychologicals twice, and one by the Department of Defense and once by Hopkins, and both tests came back and said a perfectly healthy woman took this test. Okay, now it doesn't sound that way with my voice, and I can't do anything about that. Oh, I can talk very Southern, very much like Tootsie can, but I believe in being transparent. This is the voice I have, and that's the best I can do. Okay,
right? You're not doing drag.
No, I'm not doing drag. Although we did have a joke at Lockheed, every now and then a couple of the women that were somebody would call on the phone. Cheryl, we got an admiral on the other phone. We need a manager. Pick up the phone. Yes, sir. What can I do for you? I got away with a lot of murder with that voice. Yeah. And of course, on a very bad morning, if I had a head cold and I sounded like Mr. Worf when I came to work, I mean, if I had a head cold, even now, if I get a head cold, I sound like Mr. Worf.
I love that you made the Star Trek Next Generation reference.
Well, I got enough of those uniforms in my closet, so
it's the real deal.
I'm a serious Trekkie, yeah. So the bottom line was, this guy said to me, how do you say it? I just lost my train of thought with why did we say the Trek thing? There was a reference to that. The thing was with the voice, every now and then I'd be working and I'd answer the phone, Cheryl Costa's office, with this really deep voice, Well, is Cheryl Costa around? And I can't tell him it's me. I want to figure out who the hell this is first before I say anything, right? So I said, no, I'm her intern, what can I do for you, and her intern's name got to be Scott Barons, and Scott Barons answered all her phone calls. And she was, what her nickname is at Lockheed? Oh, her nickname here is Napoleon in Heels, and it got a lot of salespeople to not call me.
Do you know what's interesting about this? It just kind of popped into my head because I know you had mentioned being a Buddhist for a while as well, right?
Okay, here we go. Let me get there. Okay. So, in the early 90s, I was doing that radio show. Okay, I was debuting plays in the Washington D.C. area. I'm a published playwright, internationally produced. Amazingly enough, you never heard of me, and I got an invitation to come out to a shaman thing out in the high Jemez Mountains of New Mexico in '94.
Okay,
I threw it in the garbage can. one of my Wicca students fished it out and went to all the students in my classes, which was over 100 people at that point, and they said they raised up the money, bought me an airline ticket and a few bucks more to take with me. I didn't have the vacation. Well, funny thing, one day I was at work a couple of weeks later, and I got into I worked on the help desk at Lockheed at the time, and technical help desk for like computer help, first and second level help desk. And I got into an argument with one of our engineers, or Microsoft engineers. Mm-hmm. And what I did not know is he was going through a divorce and he was working 90 hours a week. I did not know this. And he came apart at the seams, threw a chair at me. So they sent him up to the 5th floor of Hopkins, and the corporate shrink, who I was always going to see because I was a trans person, everybody always made me the troublemaker.
Yeah.
Okay. I was the social irritant, and he didn't support that previously. And after this event happened, he says, I should have supported you 5 years ago. He says, if I give you comp leave for 3-4 weeks and you keep out of trouble. And I said, I got this letter in my purse and an airline ticket to go hang out with the shamans in New Mexico. Cheryl, go hang out with the shamans in New Mexico. I'll have this mess cleaned up before you get back.
That's a conversation everybody wants to have.
Yeah. So I went there. I went to one of my Native American friends who was at the time, he was the legal counsel to people who were talking to federal court. Because remember, Native American tribes are technically another country. Mm-hmm. Okay, so he was one of the Native American lawyers who would represent them in federal court.
Yeah.
And I went to him and I said, Bear, I said, can you help me out here? I don't know if this is a grand necktie party or something. I mean, somebody might be trying to get me to come to New Mexico to string me up. I don't know what this is. And it wasn't like a flyer for an event. You know what I'm saying? It was a personal letter. And he did some checking and he says, it's legit. Put your affairs in order before you go, and go enjoy it and embrace it.
Well, that's great that you had that connection, someone to kind of help you and put you at ease. And would you have not gone if you weren't sure?
I was hesitant.
Yeah.
So remember, I worked in corporate security. About that time, I had just started going to work for corporate security as well. Mm-hmm. And I have a T-shirt that says "Paranoia Protects." You know, so
well, so there you go. Or hashtag.
So
sure.
I went to New Mexico. Got my spiritual butt handed to me on a mesa top in New Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
And I came back, barely knew my own name.
And what does that mean? What happened to your brain?
I got fried.
Was it like a download?
It was, well, my medical doctor, when I got back, thought I had a micro stroke. Oh my therapist looked at me and she said, I was the non-practicing Jew before I met you. And after 3 years of therapy with you, I'm now a practicing Jew again because you're the most spiritual person I've ever met. And she says, you know what I think happened out there on that mountaintop? The sky opened up and God talked to you and it shorted you out.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the approach we took. So this led me on a 2-year walkabout. I still went to work every day. But instead of being only home one night a week to do groceries and laundry, and every other night I was out there with my Wicca students, I handed off 104 Wicca students to other teachers, and I was home every night of the week except one night to go out and get groceries. Okay? And finally, after 2 years, I'm drawing visions I've had. 2 o'clock in the morning, I'm up drawing visions into a sketchbook and everything. A friend of mine who had a comparative religions degree looks at it, and she comes up to have dinner one night, and she said, I know what this is. This is Tibetan Buddhism. I said, what's that? And she said, well, it's Tibet and it's Buddhism. And I said, oh, okay.
What was it, so, like a mandala or?
Everything.
Everything.
So I didn't know what this stuff was. Mm-hmm. I was scribbling in the margins. Okay. So I get in, I get to this, she drives me around town. We start going to we get the yellow pages up. We still had yellow pages in those days, mid-90s. And we drove around, and finally we found this place out in the suburbs, and we were driving up the driveway, and I told her to stop. She says, what? I said, stop. And I opened up the book and said, there's a sketch of the place right there, all 4 pillars, and the bushes are in the right place. This is the place. So this really happened. And they took me in, and we hung out with them. It turned out to be a big feast day. We talked with some of the Buddhist nuns and some of the Buddhist monks there. And the Buddhist nuns took me aside over a cup of coffee and said, this happens sometimes. We want you to talk to Kempo. That means dean or headmaster. He's the head of Tibetan Orthodox tradition in North America. Now, Tibetan Orthodox, see, Buddhists, they see Tibetan Buddhists, they see the Dalai Lama. He's the Reformed tradition, or 4 great traditions in Tibet. Okay, the Nyingma tradition, which is the Orthodox, and then there's 2 others in the middle, and then there's the Reformed, and that's the Dalai Lama. You know, it's the equivalent between a Russian Orthodox priest and a Episcopalian. That's the difference. Okay, and the Orthodox also have their roots in shamanism. Well, by this point, I've been doing this stuff for 20 some odd years at this point. And when Lama met me, I was helping out in the kitchen at this temple. And he walked up to me. I never thought I'd get to see this guy. And he came walking up to me, shook hands with me, wouldn't let go of my hand, gets right up in my face and said, I know you. And looked at the girl next to me and said, I know you too. And we were buddies. 2 of us had kind of clicked and become friends there at the temple. And he looked back at his entourage of monks and says, these 2 hang out together lifetime after lifetime. Nice to see you again. And he toddles off. Now, I had always believed in reincarnation, but I had never had it handed to me in a technical sense. So this lead monk says to me, I think you need to go talk to him. So they set me up with a 15-minute appointment. Okay. I get in there to have this 15-minute appointment. I bow down like the monks told me I should be bowing down to him. And everything. He laughs at me. Get up here on the couch, talk to me. And how long? What were you raised in this lifetime? I said, well, I was raised Catholic. Still Catholic? I said, no, I've been running with the shamans. Oh, you're still doing the yogi stuff, huh? I said, you mean I've done this before? Are you good at it? And I said, well, yeah, I am. He said, you think you learned it all in one lifetime? And that started that 15-minute appointment turned into a 90-minute conversation. And at the end of it, you got to understand what Cheryl looked like in those days. Cheryl looked like that nice, pretty glamour shot you see. Okay, Miss Corporate 500. Okay, and so I was down on my knees and said, "You're a monk. You can't lie to me on this." I said, "I've indeed been your student in other lifetimes." He said, "Yes." And he said, "I've indeed been in this tradition many times." Yes, a boy, a girl. Other, and he said yes, and I said, I'm at your service, and I threw it to wind. About a month later, he has me and this other girl over, and there was 8 other people in the room, and he ordained us as the Tibetan equivalent to a Tibetan shaman. It's called a nakpon, or nakpa for men, nakma or nakmo for women, and so I'm a nakmo. Okay, and they have reciprocal privileges to wear Buddhist monk robes if they get the haircut and permission of the local lama. So I got that permission at one point. I figured, well, he says I used to be a monk. Let me try this. And I did. And first thing that happened is the monk at the temple that I was at did not like me. He would not issue me a set of robes.
Oh, do you know why?
Oh, he didn't like me. Remember, I'm a trans person. I creeped him out. Okay.
Oh, so that was the reason why?
Right. Well, among other things. But the bottom line was, I'm a theater person. I went home and sewed a set. Okay. So I come back to the temple wearing this set of robes I'd made. Yeah. And everybody told me I made them wrong. I said, fine. This is just what I'm going to wear until somebody gives me a proper set. All right. Kempo comes back to town a couple of weeks later. He's on speaking tour at the time. Comes back by the temple, stays in our cottage for a couple of days, and takes one look at me. He says, oh, I like your robes. Old world cut. How'd you know how to make those?
Wow.
Okay.
Now you just improvised, right? When you made those? Is that what you're getting at?
I just sort of knew how.
Okay.
It just everything made sense. Okay, so he knows all this stuff. So bottom line, what happened is that there's been this whole big opening up. Now, is Buddhism a religion? Some people treat it as a religion. It's more of a technology. And anybody, have you ever heard of the Seth material by Jane Roberts?
No.
Okay, paranormal people out there, I know you've heard of the Seth material. Okay, Jane Roberts says this, and I'll tell you this. Buddhism is the closest spiritual process, spiritual program we have on the planet that sees the reality the way it is.
Okay. So when I'm living in the monastery, I'm going to work every day at Lockheed. I'm dressed like the Dalai Lama at Lockheed. I push their diversity policies to the bleeding edge. Okay. And they didn't like me walking around headquarters dressed the way I did. They preferred I stayed over at the ghetto area of headquarters, another building. Until one day I was walking down the hall. Somebody had stolen a laptop. I was over there to do the theft report. Remember, I have corporate security at this point. And one of the vice presidents was coming down the hall with some representatives from Taiwan, and they were going to buy some jets or something, And as they're coming down the hall, these 9 guys in black suits suddenly see me, a Buddhist nun, and they throw themselves on the floor, and they're bowing to me. Oops, I know what's going on. I know what the ceremony is. So I had a silk scarf with me, and I go through a little blessing ceremony with each of the 9 men. And they later told the vice president there at Lockheed, "Oh, Lockheed, good company. You hire a Buddhist nun. That's very compassionate thing. Oh, we're going to buy stuff from you, And wow.
I'm writing my memoirs, and I tell you, nobody's going to believe this stuff. Honest to goodness, But during the course of all my training, of course, they teach you to meditate and everything. And meditate's good. And I'm going to tell you something. In meditation, don't start trying to do 45 minutes, an hour of meditation. Limit yourself to 2 minutes a day. Give me 2 minutes a day of quietness. Turn off your cell phone and give me 2 minutes. I don't care if you have to do it on the throne in the men's room or ladies' room. Just give me 2 minutes. Quiet your mind, close your eyes, and just be alone with your thoughts.
Okay.
After 2 months or so, hey, if you want to do another 2 minutes, you can either make it 4 minutes a day, or you can do 2 minutes in the morning and 2 minutes in the afternoon. Don't think you're going to machoize it like a lot of Westerners. Oh, I'm going to meditate for an hour, Well,
and that's why they fail, right?
Well, that's where they fail, exactly, because one, you're trying to drink from the freaking fire hose is what you're trying to do. And while meditation is not hard, it's not easy. And if it was so easy, everybody would be doing it, but they aren't. And there's things you have to learn that goes along with it, and you have to do it gently.
Yes, and it relies on patience as well.
Right, and they say, well, there's monks over there in Tibet or India, and they can meditate for hours and days. And I said, yeah, and they started doing it when they were 7. Okay, I spent 7 years in the monastery. My residents ended up living with the last 4 of them with Burmese monks. They liked me better than the American Tibetan ones did, and so the trick there was, how do I want to say this? Struggling for the word. Meditation is not something you strong on your way in. You have to kind of feel your way in. You have to kind of quiet your way in. Now, Lama comes to me at one point. They're having this big thing. It's called a Shedra. It's a 12-week program, like 12 hours a day for like 12 or 15 weeks, okay? And it's senior training on this stuff, okay, on the high-level theory and technology of Buddhism, right? I couldn't go. I had a day job.
Okay.
So I went to Lama and I said, Lama, I can't come. He says, okay. He says, gave me a practice for contemplation during my meditation. And at this point, I was up to a good 35, 40 minutes of meditation a day, okay?
Yeah.
And even at my best, the best I could do was probably 90 minutes. And that's after 7 years. And these days, I do 10 minutes in the morning, 10 minutes in the evening. That's all I need. Okay? But I did these contemplations. Okay. Many weeks, 12 weeks later, I get a phone call from his aide. He says, come. Okay. So I came over that afternoon. And I saw Lama sitting up on his throne. He's got his class. Everybody's got classroom tables in one of the big prayer rooms. And he sees me. He waves me in. I take an empty seat. So he starts a quiz. He starts going through the quiz. And other monks and nuns were answering the questions. Gets about 5-6 questions through it, and then he'll ask a question, and everybody's quiet, and everybody's shaking their head. Nobody knows the answer, and he looks at me. And my Buddhist name is Tashi, and because I was a nun, Ani Tashi is a salutation for it. Ani Tashi, do you know the answer? And I gave the answer, and it was correct. And after this happened about 7 times over a period of about an hour and a half worth of quiz questions, when the senior monk stood up and said, "Hey, this is the lowest flunky we've got of a novice. We've been in here for 12 weeks with you. How the hell is she answering the hardest questions in the thing, in the question set?" And he looked at me and says, "How come?" I said, "Well, 1, it's quantum physics, and 2, you taught me how to contemplate the universe, and I just reached down. All the knowledge in the universe is out there, and I plugged into that."
And I wanted to ask you, is there a chance that you believe you were ever reincarnated?
I am clearly aware at this point. I'm not enlightened, but I am clearly aware of at least a bunch of my lifetimes. So let me give you now. Let me go backwards a little bit.
Sure. Hold on 1 sec there. I just want to shout out to everyone in the chat room. If you have any questions for Cheryl,
yes.
now is the time to get it in.
Yes.
And if you are just listening on the air, you can go to the kgraradio.com website and just go to the chat room and hit us up. Okay.
Now let me go back in time a little bit. When I was a little kid, my mother didn't know who I was playing with. I was playing with Bill, or what you should probably call him is William. Okay, Wilhelm actually. He was my previous incarnation. He was a sailor on a German U-boat. Okay. When I was in 1st or 2nd grade, I made a really, really nice, high quality. My father had a nice wood shop, and short of the power tools, I was allowed to work in the wood shop. Mm-hmm. And I made a really high quality crossbow. 2nd grade. And my father said, "How did you know how to make something like this?" I said, "Well, there's this Swiss man in my head telling me how." When I got into my teens and I was dealing with these feminine drives, the joke I have with my friends is that there were these 8 or 10, 16-year-old girls saying, "Wow, those dresses are cool. That makeup is great. Try it on."
You know what? Does
this all make sense now?
Yeah, it does. Now, did it really sound like another voice? Or was just like your voice kind of reverberating some message from elsewhere? You know, do you know what I mean? Not schizophrenic, obviously.
Yeah, no, and it's been tested. It's not schizophrenic.
Yeah.
It is a memory awareness. It is a consciousness. It's a sense of okay. And what is all this stuff with like consciousness and everything? It's a sense of knowing. People who are listening in the audience who know anything about remote viewing. Mm-hmm. Remote viewing is about experiencing something without actually touching it or experiencing it in a physical context. You're experiencing it by knowing it.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what remote viewing is. And I taught when I got to run a small monastery in upstate New York back in the early 2000s. I invited some folks from the Farsight Institute, the Dr. Courtney Brown's people. And they came and taught a class on remote viewing. The cool was I gave them a free place to do it, got them a cheap hotel down the road at the golf course off season, and I got to go to the class for free. Okay, and so remote viewing is really good. The meditation and zeroing effects you do with that is good practice, is a form of it. Knowing things through like remote viewing, using remote viewing technique to actually touch things other places, other winds and everywheres. That's what this is about, guys. The consciousness. Now, the CE5 people will tell you, reach out with your heart and invite the ETs to come. Now, you're not reach out inviting them with words. This is a non-verbal conversation.
Cheryl, let's pause there for a second. So, because we were talking about you hearing some of these voices, if you were, from Wilhelm, for instance.
That's a metaphor. That's a metaphor. Give an example. I was sitting here one day, and I looked at my spouse. I was listening to 40s channel on XM Sirius, mm-hmm. and Serenade Nay plays. And I started mumbling to her. We used to sit and listen to this kind of music on the wireless mm-hmm. off the coast of Boston. Okay.
Yeah.
That was him. And, this gives you a sense of there's a sense of starting to know your past lives.
Right. And so what I was going to ask is, if you can tap into that, is that a similar sensation to this ET thing? Because we kind of jumped from one to the other. So I'm just wondering if there's like
okay. So the ET thing. Mm-hmm. Okay. We have to stop treating the paranormal stuff, ghosts, ETs, remote viewing, all like they're separate stovepipes. It's all the same stuff. Okay. I've been trying to teach my Wicca friends remote viewing, and they push back on me. And I said, guys, you're trying to learn to talk to your younger self. This is the part that touches the great consciousness, the force, the God force, if you want to call it that. Well, what about all the faces of God? Yeah, okay, there's 33 million of them. Ask any Hindu that. Doesn't matter. It's one force, but it's so incomprehensible. We, with our smaller mindsets, have to think of it as a certain face of God here, or something that pleases us our way. It might be the guy on the ceiling in the Sistine Chapel. It might be something carved into a tree out in some jungle someplace. It doesn't matter. It's some face of God. It helps give us that connection. Okay. And that's what this is about. It's about connection. And the way to get to the connection is to quiet yourself. Now, the biggest impediment we have to it in the 21st century is those things that thing in your phone. That phone in your hand is wiring you to all kinds of things, and it distracts you. You are addicted. It is an addiction as bad as nicotine or heroin. Okay, and if you cannot be alone with your thoughts, I used to watch people come into the temple and they'd stick their phone in their back pocket and they'd sit on their meditation pillow, and then suddenly we'd hear this buzzing sound from their thing, and they're over there scrambling around like they're trying to hatch an egg or something, trying to get off their pillow to get their phone. And I got to the point where a couple of us monks started, we'd question people coming into the center. We'd say, are you a member of remember we were in D.C. at the time. Are you a member of the White House West Wing staff and you're on call? Okay. Are you a member of the intelligence infrastructure? Are you on call? Are you a member of the Pentagon infrastructure? Are you on call? Are you a fireman, a doctor, a paramedic, and are you on call? If you're not, leave your phone locked up in your car.
It's like when I'm watching TV and I hit mute on the commercial break. Sometimes I'll pick up my phone and start doing that. And it's like, whoa, you can do with like 2 minutes without, and I have to force myself sometimes to put it down.
Yeah. I don't live on my phone. And a lot of people really get very upset with me. They say, well, I sent you a text. And I said, oh, really? I didn't even turn it on today.
There's so many people that are, I think, interested in the paranormal and what they can do in terms of metaphysics, and a lot of that knowledge and awareness of those things comes because of the technology. So are we like taking 2 steps forward, 1 step back, or?
Yeah, it is to some degree. If you're willing, I've had students in the past that were willing to lock the phone up and come in to either our class or our ceremony or whatever, and we're willing to embrace it with the phones locked up someplace or off. Okay. But the deal is that anybody can do this. I mean, I have a very busy life, I'm technically retired. I'm putting in about a 35-hour week because everything related to doing these radio shows. I have my own radio show. I write a column. I write a magazine. I write a feature grade magazine article for Wicca Magazine once a month. I'm a working author journalist right now, and technical co-host. Oh, by the way, I write stuff for the UFO community too. I'm busier now than. How did I ever find time to go to work?
Well, that's because seems to me you live an exploratory and charged full life, and the more you keep going, there's just more of you to exist, and more of you to share with others, and to grow, to expand upon. Between these two religions, if you will, or I should say spiritual paths, right?
That's better.
In your sake, yeah. Buddhism and Wicca, which one works Which one resonates?
Okay, I'm light years away from Wicca. In fact, there's a lot of people right now that would talk to me who are Wiccan, that are hard dyed-in-the-wool Wiccan, that would say I've lost the faith. No, I'm considered a mystic witch, because I got more of I've gone back, sort of like a quasi shamanic Buddhist, if you want to go back to Buddhist roots on this thing. Was there anything that they taught me? Well, they taught me Buddhism. They taught me meditation. They taught me contemplation. Contemplation is a big deal. You know, you learn to get yourself quiet, and then you learn to contemplate. That's the second half of meditation, okay? You learn to contemplate things. And if you open yourself up, once you've learned how to quiet your mind and get rid of all the little monsters that come up when you first start meditating, as you first start meditating, you start having all these troubles of the day coming up in front of you. Let go of it. Just let it go. Don't worry about it. Everybody has that. Those little ghosts and the nasty little things that you think about. You're worrying about the furnace, the kids, the car, the traffic, whatever, And then the deeper you get into it, eventually you get past the point where that doesn't bother you as much. And then you can start contemplation, and you begin thinking about certain things. We'll say, start thinking about quantum physics or something like this. And sooner or later, while you're thinking about this kind of stuff, you ask a question. And you know what's nuts about it? Everyone I've ever taught to do this said they ask a simple question. Suddenly it was like the answer filled their head. It wasn't like a booming voice in your noggin. It was like, I know.
And what are the questions?
It can be anything. Don't ask for tomorrow's lottery numbers. I'm sorry. But the point is like, okay, regarding this with ETs, the CE5 people have it on the right track, reaching out in a nonverbal way with invitations of joy and invitation. But it has to be nonverbal. You're not sitting there chanting prayers, because the younger self, there's three elements. And this is like the Trinity that they taught us in Catholic school. The Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost. Mm-hmm. Okay. And the Wiccans teach the Mother, Maiden, and the Crone. Okay. But what it really amounts to is, how theologians they told us in Catholic school, the theologians have never figured out the three gods in one thing. Okay? Oh, it's a mystery. Okay? What it amounts to is, one, we have a God spark within us. That's our younger self. That's that little spark that connects us to everything, everywhere, everywhen, the God force.
Okay?
Okay? That's Obi-Wan Kenobi stuff. We're connected to everything. Mm-hmm. Okay? Okay. We are incarnate. So because we've got that God force in us, that makes us God incarnate, the son or the daughter, okay? And because the younger self is in there, it still is at a primordial nonverbal state where it can communicate to the whole God force that permeates all the multiverses. Okay?
So 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, there you go.
So theologians out there studying, put down your pencils, debate is over.
Yeah, basically that's how it works.
We got to figure it out.
And it isn't necessarily a Wiccan taught you that as much. A Wiccan, probably an elementary Wiccan, could have taught you about this talking self, the younger self, and the higher self. Uh-huh. But this is a mystic witch trying to explain to you. That's how everything is wired, guys. And every living thing out there has a piece of what we used to call in Buddhism, Buddha nature, that spark of the force. And the mythology that Lucas gave us is very good if you want non-denominational. Mm-hmm. So that's the deal. And it's about non-verbally communicating. And when I see people coming into a witch circle or a Wicca circle, and they come in with big, long prayers and incantations and things, I cringe. I say, oh, my God, another former Catholic here is going to come in here and give us liturgy here. Because real magic is done not with incantations. It is not done with incense. It is about quieting yourself and being able to communicate your intentions with a non-verbal technique.
Well, are we supposed to be looking for the source, the connection, that sort of revelatory, all-knowing experience that you had? Or is it okay just to look for inner peace?
Yeah, all of the above.
So if I just say, I just need some peace of mind.
Do it. Do it.
And there's no
trying to get enlightenment in this lifetime. If you're not ready for it, don't beat yourself up. As my Lama used to say, give yourself a break. Don't be so hard on yourself, but don't let yourself get away with murder.
But is it our destiny to get there?
Yes. Because we are part of the God force, and the God force has gazillions of us living beings out there that are each taking a little piece of experience and trying to make the greater God force whole and understanding of all these different problems.
Okay, now that means every single one of us is reincarnating at some point?
Millions of times. From when you were bugs to what you are now.
In the same universe or multi-universes, or how big does this thing get?
As big as it is.
That's a very Zen response from you.
Well, no, I got a Zen wife, believe me, and she'd say something like that too. You should hear the arguments we have in this household that are of the monastic nature. Yeah. See, I could only marry somebody who was equally qualified to me when I got married this time. When I came out of the monastery, I could have a spouse, but they had to be equally qualified to me, and she was.
Yeah.
She's I casually refer to, she is a Zen master but by my standards she is, but not by some other people standards she might not be, but she's read far more books than I do, but doesn't
that make for the best relationship when you care enough for each other to challenge each other without being mean or just keeping
it's what we call in Buddhism, particularly in monastic or that type of that living style is what's the word, checking each other.
Okay.
I call her out on a practice if she's violating the code we live by, and she calls me out. Okay. We are always checking each other to make sure we stay within the boundaries of where our thought pattern should be.
Question for you. Ex-lady from the chat room asked, do you have another book coming out?
Yes and no. We're trying to produce a book. If we produced another data book just the way the last one was, if we did it the way we really wanted to do it, it'd be 2,700 pages. And so what we're going to do is we're going to produce...
This is in reference to the UFO sightings.
UFO sightings, okay. UFO sightings. Now, in that regard, yes, we're going to produce 9 regional books, and each of them are going to take the states that are in the census regions and produce all of that data in a very, very advanced format, because we've got stuff to show you that you'd never believe, okay? Because we've had 3-4 years to analyze this stuff. Now, do I have a book coming out on consciousness? I've got a lot of people writing me right now on email and IM and PM telling me I should. I'm hesitant to, because about the minute I put it down, it'll be obsolete. But I'm thinking about doing it. If people think I should one based on what I've told you, yeah, I'll write a book. But right now, I'm not motivated to write one. But if people think I should, I will share one.
All right, Cheryl, where can people find out about you? Website?
CherylCosta.com, or you can find me, Cheryl Costa, on Facebook if you want.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Cheryl, for coming on. This is it. I appreciate it. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
All right. So to find out more about Cheryl, go to her website. Tonight, you've been listening to Paranormal Now live on KGRA Radio. This is Alan B. Smith, your most grateful host. Stay tuned for Fade to Black with Jimmy Church in just a moment. And tune in next Tuesday, 8 p.m. EST, for our guest Sky Alexander to talk about the power of planets, astrology in your life. Special thanks to Race Hobbs and Bill at KGRA. And until next time, live in the mystery.
I'm a mess, but a hot mess. Learning to love all my indiscretions. I've been going and I don't wanna be found.